Welcome back, group. This is MACT of MACT Garage in the oil testing series for these virgin samples of different oils that are commonly found throughout the either internet or at the store shelves. And we're going to carry on with another episode of testing these oils that I do have on hand. And before we get started, I just want you all to understand that if you're watching this YouTube video, I do not have comments or anything activated. You must go to MACTFORDEDGE on Facebook and join Facebook in order to chat about these different oil samples and the pros and cons and everything else that goes with that. We also have MACT t-shirts for sale, so you'll find that in the link down below in the description comment of this video, along with all sorts of other information on how to buy these oil products that are featured in these videos. I will also note that these samples were paid for out of pocket by private funds, and there is no sponsorship by any oil company concerning these videos, and all samples have been tested at the same laboratory, which is Blackstone Labs. So we're having everything being on an equal footing. We're going to give you the truth about what is in these oils and let you know which is the better one in our opinion, in my opinion, as far as the testing goes. So with that being said, we're going to jump right into this. And the first battle we're going to have again is the two oils we have. We have the Schaeffer's. Yes, Schaeffer's Synthetic 520 against the Penzoil Platinum, which I know people have been waiting for. So we have these two matched together. Is it a fair trade, or will one go over the other? But we're going to jump into it and find out what's going on with these and discuss the pros and cons with the additives that are in both of these oils. So that being said, let the matchup begin. Now we're going to jump right on into it, and the first one on the list here that we have on the samples is the Schaeffer Supreme 9000, as it's called, and it retails for $11.67 a quart on Amazon. So you can buy that, and that's pretty pricey oil there. So let's see what it's going to be doing. But the virgin sample that they had that I sent was basically not too unusual for anything. It has the common moly, phosphorus, zinc, and detergent and dispersant additives such as sodium and calcium, etc., that's in there. And we'll cover those in great detail. And the viscosity, of course, was great. And this was considered a viable sample to be used in the engine. So no problems with the Schaeffer's Supreme 9000. Next on the list is the Penzoil Platinum, and this oil again was tested, and you can buy it like at AutoZone for $9.69, which makes it a lot cheaper than the Schaeffer's. But again, it does have the actual moly, phosphorus, zinc, and other anti-wear additives, along with calcium, magnesium, and other detergents and dispersants in it, and it is considered by the lab to be a viable, usable oil with no problems. So we're going to move on into the sampling, and as with all things, we always start out with the top of the list being A for aluminum. And our aluminum content in these virgin samples was running at 1 part per million for the Schaeffer and 1 part per million for the Penzoil, with a universal average of 0. So this is not uncommon to have some metal in it due to the manufacturing process that the oils go through. Chromium was the next one on the list, and our chromium level was 0 for the Penzoil and the Schaeffer's, with universal averages at 0 parts per million. So we're standing right neck and neck so far for both of these oils. We have 1 part per million in both the Schaeffer and the Penzoil Penzoil Platinum, and I'm getting tongue-tied on this all the time. Iron content of 1 part per million for each, with universal averages being 1 part per million. So that's a common thing to find a little bit of iron in your virgin sample. Copper, we have 0 copper in our Schaeffer's and also 0 copper in the Penzoil, with a universal average being at 0. So it's not a problem as far as having any copper in there. It is all pretty clean. Lead, we have 0 lead in the Schaeffer and 0 lead in the Penzoil Platinum, and we have a universal average of 0. So all things being equal, they're still neck and neck as far as the manufacturing and metals process for both of these virgin samples. Tin is another one they checked for, and we have 0 in the Schaeffers, and the Penzoil Platinum has 0 also, and the universal averages agree with that, being at 0 with no problems. Molybdenum, yes, I have a hard time with that, so do you guys. But molybdenum is basically Moly B, as we all commonly call it, and we have the Schaeffer weighing in at 283 parts per million of the Moly B, with the Penzoil Platinum weighing in with just 52 parts per million of the Moly B. So the universal average being 72. So we have the Penzoil a little bit behind the power curve on this first rack up. So therefore we're going to put the lead to the Schaeffer. Nickel, we have no nickel in the Schaeffer or the Penzoil, with a universal average of 0 also. So nothing new here. Manganese, we have 0 manganese in the Schaeffer and 0 manganese in the Penzoil, with a universal average that agrees with it at 0. Silver, there's absolutely no silver in either one of them. Otherwise I'd keep them and take and sell them, but there is no silver in the Schaeffer or in the Penzoil, with a universal average of 0, so it's all in agreement on this one. Titanium seems to be the additive of choice of a lot of newer oils, and these two oils have basically said, to heck with y'all, we're not going to do it. So the Schaeffer has absolutely no titanium in it, along with the Penzoil, absolutely no titanium, with the universal average for virgin samples weighing in about 3 parts per million on the average. Potassium, we have 3 parts per million potassium in the Schaeffer, and we have 1 part per million in the Penzoil, with a universal average of just 1 part per million in all the oils tested. Boron, what kind of boron do we have in here? Well, the Schaeffer put 10 parts per million boron, not exactly exciting amount here, but the Penzoil put just 2 parts per million. And keep in mind, the universal averages for boron in virgin oils is 89 parts per million. So both of them are behind the power curve as far as the boron additive goes. And that still keeps the Schaeffer ahead of the Penzoil Platinum. Silicon, the Schaeffer puts in 7 parts per million of the silicon, while the Penzoil Platinum only puts in 3 parts per million, and the universal average is 3 parts per million. So again, the lead goes to the Schaeffer as far as the silicon additive. Sodium, we're going to step up the plate with some sodium, and the Schaeffer oil tosses in 439 parts per million of the sodium, whereas the Penzoil Platinum puts in a big goose egg, 0 sodium. And the universal average is 58 overall for most virgin samples. So again, we have the Schaeffer far ahead now as far as the actual additives in the oil. Calcium. Now we're going to start separating the men from the boys, right? Well, let's see what happens. We have calcium in the Schaeffer at a tune of 1,906 parts per million in the Schaeffer oil. The Penzoil Platinum has 2,139 parts per million, with a universal average of 1,896. Now these aren't really stellar numbers compared to anything. They're not way higher than the universal average, pretty close to it, but this one goes to the Penzoil Platinum for just slightly more calcium in the oil. So we got 1 win marked up for the Penzoil Platinum on this one. Magnesium, we have the Schaeffer coming in at 7 parts per million, with the Penzoil Platinum coming in at 10. But keep in mind, the universal average for magnesium is generally 88 parts per million. So both of these lightweights here in this aspect. But again, we're going to give that one to the Penzoil Platinum, but barely. Let's see, phosphorus. We're going to weigh in at 764 parts per million for the Schaeffer, with the Penzoil Platinum coming in at a close second at 718. Both oils are over the universal average of 657 parts per million for the actual phosphorus content. So that is pretty close neck and neck, but again, the Schaeffer takes the win for that one. Now we got zinc. Everybody puts zinc in their oil, so there's no surprise that there's zinc in either one of these two. But the Schaeffer puts in 824 parts per million zinc, while the Penzoil Platinum puts in 801, with the universal average being 771 parts per million. So both of them exceed the universal average, but again, the Schaeffer puts in just slightly more than the Penzoil, so we're going to give that one to the Schaeffer as far as that win there. Our barium levels, I've never seen anything more than 0 in any virgin sample, and it stands to rest here too. We have 0 in the Schaeffer, and we have 0 in the Penzoil, with a universal average of 0. Now we're going to jump on over to the actual viscosity testing, and we have the SUS viscosity at 210 degrees Fahrenheit, and we have the Schaeffer rocking in at 53.9, and then we have the Penzoil Platinum coming in at 52.3. Not a big spread between the two, but they're both on the higher end of the scale, mid to high, and the average is 47 to 57. So they're both pretty much average plus as far as their viscosity on this test. The CST viscosity at 100 degrees Celsius, we have the similar story here, where we have 8.45 for the Schaeffer, and we have a 7.98 for the Penzoil Platinum. The average is 6.4 to 9.7. So both of these are tipping the scale on the higher mid side of the CST viscosity test, which is good, keeps them running good. Now here we have a big difference. We have the Schaeffer weighing in on our Flashpoint test at 425 degrees, which is fairly low, and then we have the Penzoil Platinum coming in at a whopping 450 degrees Fahrenheit for a Flashpoint, with anything being over 400 considered good. Now I will say the Penzoil Platinum does have the lead on this one, and used oil testing would probably result in the Penzoil Platinum winning the overall war, and I would think over use and time that the Schaeffer may lose the mid-level area here for this, and since the level is 400 degrees for the minimum, they're pretty close to that minimum there. So oil usage later on with a little fuel added to it could cause it to pop below that 400 mark, but you never know until you've actually done used testing, which I do not have at this time. Our fuel percentages, of course, were 0 because these are unused samples, so there will be no fuel inside these samples, and therefore no concerns. Also, since they are new samples, we will not have any antifreeze or coolant present, so therefore it stands to reason there is nothing to report on the antifreeze. Water, that means they kept the water out of the processing system, and therefore there's no water present in either one of these samples, which means a good manufacturing process. Our insolubles was, of course, 0, which means we had no trace of any type of additives that lost suspension and settled to the bottom. So therefore there's no insolubles in these virgin samples, although I have seen trace amounts on occasion. I generally believe that's due to the boron. But overall, we have good samples here, and these two oils have definitely played a game and definitely running hard. Now, we want to take and weigh in what our samples are, and we have both of these. And of course, the Penzoil, you could say, well, it's cheaper, but it doesn't have the additives that the Schaeffer has. And since we're comparing additives more than price at this point, in one of my later videos, I will sum all this up for price point and quality of oil. But for right now, with this matchup, if we're just sticking with the actual data that we have concerning the additives, guess what? Schaeffer wins. Yes, Schaeffer would be your better oil for all the additives that are present in the oil, with the Penzoil losing this round, and might win on a later date when we do the actual cost versus additives comparison. But for now, that oil does win, and we will carry on there. And I do want you all to remember, of course, MACTFORDEDGE on Facebook, and of course this YouTube channel. Like and subscribe. And remember, no comments, jump over to MACTFORDEDGE and join that group. With that being said, we also have the Band of One that plays some great music, and our SoundCloud podcast. Don't forget those. Jump over there, and of course I'll put a link down below in the description to the SoundCloud, so you can jump on there and listen while you're driving or doing housework or whatever it is you do, so you can listen to those. And then any other footage that I can put at the end of this video, I will put there. And last but not least, my fee at the floor today, and I'm having a great day, and I want you to have a great day too. And Mercy Girl's got a couple of one-liners for you here at the end of the video.
Thank you for watching MACT's videos, and remember to like and subscribe. This is a Mercy Girl production.